I love cookies, especially freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. I mean, who can resist that aroma? So, how does it all work? Why do cookies taste so good to most of us? How do our brains process and interpret the information our senses take in?
Getting back to the cookie, its delicious smell, look, texture, and taste are all processed by the senses. For example, light passes through the eye to the optic nerve. These visual signals pass through the thalamus to the visual cortex in the occipital lobe. This allows us to see the cookies. We have receptors in our skin that sense pressure, temperature, and pain. The energy they receive travels through the thalamus to the sensory cortex in the parietal lobe. The smell of the cookie comes through the olfactory system. The scent travels through the nostrils to the olfactory bulbs in the brain, through the amygdala, and onto the olfactory cortex in the temporal and frontal lobes. Olfaction is the one sense that bypasses the thalamus. Let's not forget about my favorite part, the taste. The gustatory system provides the pathway for chemical molecules on the tongue and in the nose to travel to several regions of the brain. Taste signals pass through the limbic system, including the thalamus, and onto the gustatory cortex and somatosensory cortex in several lobes of the brain. Taste and smell signals converge in a part of the frontal lobe. Yep, tasting isn't just in your mouth. Your olfactory sense is equally important. When we crunch into the cookie, sound waves travel through the ear and auditory nerve to the thalamus, reaching the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe of the brain. Finally, the kinesthetic and equilibratory senses give feedback about body and head position, helping us balance as we continue to enjoy the delicious cookie.
Our field reporter Dwayne paid a visit to Dr. Alan Hirsch of the Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Foundation in Chicago for the details about how we gain so much meaning from what we see, smell, touch, and taste.
Dr. Hirsch, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you could just explain to me, how exactly does smell and taste work? Like, what is happening in here? For example, I walk into a bakery, all these odors, things in the air, they hit me. What happens?
Well, what happens is in a very simplistic way, the odorant molecules enter your nostrils and they go up through your nose, bind to the olfactory epithelium or the olfactory nerve.
No, that's right
That's at the top of the nose. That's right. The olfactory nerve progresses through a very paper-thin bone called the cribriform plate, up through into the skull and binds to the olfactory bulb. And from there, it progresses backwards in the brain into the olfactory lobe, which is part of the limbic system, or the emotional brain. And thus, you can actually change somebody's mood state or emotions with smell.
Now, can you talk about exactly how are smell and taste related?
When we say taste, we really mean smell. About 90% of what we call taste is smell. So if you hold your nose and eat chocolate, it tastes just like chocolate. It has no taste at all. Or if you hold your nose and eat a potato and a carrot, or an apple and onion, they taste the same. When we say taste, we mean smell. It's a form of synesthesia, of misperception of one sense as another. So for instance, if you close your eyes and lightly push on your eyeballs, you see light there. Where there's no light, you're misperceiving the pressure of light. The same thing happens with smell and taste all the time. So smell that comes in from outside of your nose, this orthonasal smell that goes up to the top of your nose, we call that smell.
Right.
Smell that comes in through your mouth, through the back of your throat, through your oropharynx, up to the top of your nose, we call that smell taste.
But it's the same molecules, basically. It's just
Exactly.
interpreted differently based on
Exactly.
where it hits you first.
Now there clearly are actual tastes. There's sweet and sour and salty and bitter and umami and maybe even fat tastes in the tongue, but in the mouth and on the top of the palate. But those are relatively insignificant. As a matter of fact, you often will not have the sense of taste, yet you perceive your taste as fine. On the other hand, when you lose your sense of smell, you come and you'll complain, I can't taste.
And our perception of the cookie doesn't end there. I mean, it's not just about the smell, texture, and taste of those simple ingredients, is it? Many of us derive much more meaning from a cookie than the ingredients would suggest.